Hello, everybody. I am live. How are you? I hope you're well. I hope the technical aspects of this stream are present and correct. I was waiting for a pop-up window to appear and start playing the sound back to me because that's happened before. So maybe I've somehow fixed that issue. I don't know what I did. So there you go. But perhaps the team at YouTube has taken that obstacle away from us. But anyway, lovely to see you. Good to be live here this Friday, this 2nd of June. We are officially in summertime, and I hope it's pleasant wherever you are in the world. In the UK, here it is currently, which is a surprise because we are notoriously unreliable with our weather, but it's really quite pleasant. There's a fresh breeze and plenty of sunshine at the moment. So there you go. And again, regardless of what time you are joining me at, this is my lunchtime practice session. So if you are joining me in the middle of your day, if you are in the Euro time zone, then hopefully this will give you a little recharge, ready to continue your day, or even to step into the weekend ahead if you've got some fun plans. Conversely, it might be the start of your day. If you're somewhere in the States, it might be very early in the morning for you there. So this might help you set yourself, set your mind, set your attitude, bring some focus and attention to whatever you're doing. Or if you are in Asia somewhere, then it's going to be much later in your day, tea time, early evening, even very late in the evening if you were over in Japan. So anyway, wherever you are in the world, I hope that you find this valuable. And I hope that you enjoy some meditative practices and reflections with me. So we're going to start with a focus on sound, a meditation on sound. And I love using sound as a focus for mindfulness, for meditation, because we are very seldom in a perfectly calm, pristine palace for contemplation and for meditation. So I'm sat in a room in my house and not a recording studio without sound insulation or soundproofing. And I live in a relatively busy side road. So there's some building and construction work going on not too far from here, which you might hear come across on the microphone, hopefully not too badly. There are dogs and delivery lorries and all these things in the area that make noise and might startle us, might distract us from the smoothness of our meditative contemplations. So focusing on sound is a really practical tool for our mindful efforts because it allows us to detach ourselves from the emotional responses, from the frustrating thoughts that can arise when our meditation is faced with a distraction of noise. Someone playing a musical instrument a few houses away, or someone playing a television a little louder than we'd like. People making noise, the noise of life, the noise of others around us. It might be a noisy contraption you have in your house. You might have some air conditioning clunking away, or a fridge freezer, or a kettle, or any number of things that could be whirring, clanking, clicking, and essentially detracting from the sense that a lot of us can artificially create about how we should meditate, that we should be in a quiet place, free from all distractions. And whilst that can be incredibly helpful, depending on the focus of our meditation, depending on the stage we are with our practice, it's also very practical, very helpful to focus and meditate on the distractions of life, because that's where we really feel the sharp end of our meditation, of our mindfulness. Right? If it doesn't work in the real world, if it doesn't work outside our meditation room or our meditation circle, then it's probably not really helping us all that much at all. So by bringing super practical focus elements to your mindfulness, hopefully it'll give you something really helpful to hang a hook onto, a hook of attention, a hook of focus. So – after that long-winded preamble, we're going to begin with a meditation, a focus on mindfulness, on the sounds about us. So, as always, find yourself, please, somewhere comfortable, somewhere that you are safe and going to be undisturbed by and large, accepting what I just said and my caveats for meditating on sound for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. And you can do this practice sitting or lying down, entirely up to you. And you can let your eyes gently close if you wish, or you can keep them open if you prefer. If you want to keep the eyes open, just let them softly focus into the middle distance, into the space between a wall or window in front of you, looking perhaps at the air itself, the slight shimmering that you get if you place your focus between the object and your eyes. And just take a couple of slow breaths and let the body settle into a comfortable and still position. Taking a moment to stretch anything that might need to be stretched, to reposition your shoulder, your hips, your feet, your hands. And check in with how you're feeling right now at the start of this practice, at the start of today's session. How does the mind feel in this moment? And remember, there's no requirement to feel a certain way. We don't need to feel relaxed. We don't need to feel still, calm. Our mind might be busy. It might be distracted. We might be frustrated by events that have taken place or events that we imagine are waiting for us. We might be frustrated that we don't feel relaxed and in a mood for mindful meditation and reflection. Just open your mind to the experience that you're in and take note. An attitude of curious attention is useful for this. And how's the body feeling at this time as well? Just gently casting your awareness across the space of the physical body. Does it feel comfortable and relaxed? Or is it prickly, fidgety, perhaps a little achy, a little stiff? And yet again, the invitation is, as best we can, to turn gently towards the experience that we find, however that may present itself. So we've taken a moment to notice the mind. We've taken a moment to notice the body. And just check in now, a last cursory curiosity on the feeling tone of this experience right now. And the feeling tone is simply whether the experience of this moment is pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. It's a very simple element of curious attention, curious inquiry to bring to your experience. So, having noted the aspect of now, let's simply listen and open ourselves to the experience and sensation of sounds around us. So you might notice the sound of my voice speaking, the tone and the pitch, the pace, the rhythm. You might be hearing sounds from the local environment in which you're in. It might be the whirring of a computer that you might be using to watch this on, sound of kettles, televisions, animals, people, traffic. Just take some time to relax into the sounds as they appear. As they disappear. Notice when a sound arises, any thoughts that attach themselves, that appear in your conscious experience. Any judgment of the sound. Is this sound pleasant? Does this sound meet my expectations of a sound that I want to hear during a mindful practice? Is this sound not conducive to me feeling relaxed and spacious and mindful? And if you notice that experience, that's perfectly normal. It's a perfectly normal and natural state of the mind to seek to filter the environment that we're in, to seek to preference certain sounds, to seek to avoid other sounds. And so the associated stream of thoughts is quite normal. And so the invitation here is not to seek to cease the thoughts, but to see if we can avoid letting ourselves get lost in them. Avoid being swept up in the current of the mind and carried along until we are deposited once again on the shores of a sense of awareness about ourselves in the present moment. Notice any sense of reaching for sound, looking for a sound to arrive. See if you can just fall back into the space in which sound is present. And perhaps you're in a space where there isn't much sound apart from my voice. Perhaps it's quiet. But you can bring the same quality of attentive, curious listening to the space between the sounds. The waiting for a sound to arrive. The thoughts that might be associated with that space. See if it's possible to let go of the thought labels that are arising, of the metaphor, the conditions, the terms that the language aspects of our mind is seeking to attach. Oh, that's a car engine. That's a person talking. That's a cat. That's a computer. That's not pleasant. I want to hear more of that. See if you can recognize those thought processes as they arise and simply choose not to follow them. Can a thought arise without being mesmerized by it? Without being distracted and compelled to follow it? And every time you notice that you've been lost, perhaps distracted a little by thought, just simply begin again and listen. Resting in the direct experience of sound. How does this actually feel? this direct experience with sound itself. The pure elements of the sound experience, unlittered by thought. Just rest here for a couple of minutes, just as best you can, simply listening. And so, as we bring this part of the practice towards a close, just take a moment to check in with how the body feels now. Again, perhaps it feels relaxed or energized, or perhaps it feels tired, uncomfortable. Again, we're not looking to achieve a specific state or condition. This is an invitation simply to pay attention and to note what we find. And check in as well with how the mind feels now at the end of this stage of the practice. Whether it feels any more relaxed, any more spacious, or whether it's still tense, busy. Simply see what's true for you. Just note the experience, nothing more. And when you're ready, just gently opening your eyes if they were closed, and perhaps moving your shoulders a little bit about, have a little stretch, wriggle your toes, your fingers. Just bring the body back to life a bit. Have a look around the space that you're in. Take all the time you need. And as you're gathering yourself, just have a little reflect on how this part of the practice felt for you, whether it felt easy, pleasant, whether it was difficult, uncomfortable, distracted, whether the quality of the focus on sound was something that you were able to rest your attention to fairly simply, or whether that itself was challenging. And whether there was anything that you learned about the relationship you have with certain sounds. Was there a response of frustration if a dog barked or shuffled about, or if there was traffic nearby? And we don't need to judge our experience. This isn't a critical eye. This is a curious investigation, a curious attention to our experience, to the nature of the mind, and what we might learn from that attention that might help us in our day-to-day experience with ourselves and with others that we come into contact with. Thank you. So just take a moment, stretch yourself out, stand up if you want to, move about, get yourself a drink of water if you fancy. Think about any questions that you might want to send into the chat or to the Conscious Together website. We will be meeting again on Wednesday as a group and continuing our combinations of mindful discussion and mindful practice to hopefully help you develop your journey into mindfulness. Okay, so the second part of this practice, this lunchtime practice for me, possibly not lunchtime for you, depending on where you are in the world, is going to be simply a focus on the breath. And this is often a very reliable, very simple anchor for us to bring our attention to, our awareness to, something that we always carry with us. And we can use it as a focus because it's with us anytime, any place, anywhere. We can use it to ground ourselves in a supermarket queue, in a queue of traffic, when the world around us feels a little bit pressured, a little bit stressful. There are simple breathing exercises that can be done, and simply paying attention to the breath itself can be very helpful in grounding ourselves, can be very therapeutic in the moment when life feels busy around us. It's one of the simplest, most effective tools for most people. Now, some people don't have a comfortable relationship with the breath, and I accept that. And so if that's you, then please feel free to not follow the breath for this practice if it doesn't feel right for you. And you could focus instead on a different anchor in the body, perhaps the feet, the hands. And sometimes if we are very prone to anxiety, if we have very stressful lives, if we've got perhaps medical circumstances, personal circumstances that mean that our breath simply is very physically uncomfortable, then using the breath as an anchor can be a challenge and may not be appropriate. But again, that's why we have multiple focuses in meditation and mindfulness, so that we can accommodate the various circumstances and challenges that individual people have in life. And some focuses that work very well for some will be particularly challenging, difficult, frustrating for others, and that's okay. So there's no need to focus on the breath if that's not right for you, but if you can settle your attention to the breath, then it can be really quite helpful tool for balancing the mind and for focusing your attention in the moment. So with that said, we'll begin the second practice. So once again, sit or lie comfortably. Take some time to position yourself into a posture or a position that you can comfortably maintain for the next period of time, maybe 15 minutes or so. And see if it's possible to keep the body still once you've settled into the space that you're going to adopt. See if it's possible to resist the temptation, the urge to fidget, to adjust. And of course, if things become very uncomfortable or if you have specific postural challenges, then please do make the changes that you need to make. But if you're able to observe the tendency of the mind to get involved with the experience of the body and see if you can follow that journey, that experience without moving the body. Just see what that's like. See if that's something that you can work with as part of this practice today. And once again, you may do this practice with eyes open or eyes closed, entirely up to you, whatever you feel most comfortable with. If you let the eyes close softly, then know that you can open the eyes at any time, particularly if you feel uncomfortable or if you feel sleepy. And if you want to leave the eyes open, that's perfectly fine. Just softly focused somewhere in the middle distance. Not really focusing on anything specifically, just letting the gaze fall somewhere between the eyes and another object, whether that's the window, a wall, the sky in the distance, and trees, whatever that might be for you. And check in once again at the start of this practice how the mind feels at this moment. Just a curious inventory of the space that it's occupying, the nature of the thoughts that might be bouncing around, whether they are for the future, holding to the past, or the seemingly random thoughts that appear from time to time. And checking in with the physical experience of the body, whether it's comfortable or tense, feels awake or lethargic. And there's no right experience. There's no way that the body or the mind needs to feel. See if you can turn towards whatever you find as best you can without judgment, without criticism, without wishing it was some way else, some way other than you find it right now. And finally, simply the feeling tone. So just that simple question: is this experience right now, right here, pleasant, unpleasant, or neither. And so, having made that curious inventory, bring the attention as best you can to the experience of the breath at the tip of the nose. Bring the attention as closely as possible to the sensations there. You might notice cooler air coming into the nose. You might notice slightly warmer air leaving again. See if you can notice the labeling tendency of the mind, of our thoughts, to describe, to narrate this circumstance, this experience to us. And see if you can let that go, let those thoughts be, and focus closely on the felt experience itself. And thoughts are likely to keep trying to pop their head up, to poke their way in, to start a conversation. See if you can notice them as quickly as they arise and focus on them rather than following them. And instead of being mesmerized and swept away in their current, as best you can, come back to the direct, raw sensation of the breath at the tip of the nose. You don't need to change the breath in any way. You don't need to slow it down. You don't need to breathe more deeply. Let the breath be as it is, breathing as it comfortably chooses to do so. letting go of the words to describe the experience. How does it actually feel? The experience of the breath at the tip of the nose. In this moment, is it pleasant? Unpleasant? Not really either. Perhaps the sensations aren't particularly noticeable at all. Perhaps there isn't much to feel. There's no answer you need to find. This is purely noticing, paying attention, a crisp awareness of what is this current experience of the body as it breathes. And if you find yourself distracted by thoughts, just note those thoughts where they're taking you, to the future, to the past, to something completely curious. And whether those thoughts are pleasant or unpleasant, and whether you would choose to follow those thoughts if you were being discerning about how you spent this moment. Are those thoughts worth investing in? Are they worth being lost to? Are they helpful thoughts? And then just gently begin again back to the experience of the breath at the tip of the nose. Keep coming back to the direct experience as best you can. Every time you're lost, every time you're distracted, come back to temperature, pressure, tingling, the space between the sensations. The direct experience, the raw patterns and sensations of the breath. And so, as we start to bring this part of the practice to a close, just take a moment to notice how the body feels now. As best you can, letting go of the tendency to judge the experience. It might be pleasant, the body might feel more relaxed. There might be thoughts that are pleasing attached to that. If that's true, just notice that, just as if there were frustrated thoughts, disappointed thoughts. The judging mind. And the nature of the thoughts themselves, the nature of the mind in this moment, whether it's relaxed, spacious, pleasant, or distracted, taut, perhaps unpleasant. And if your eyes are closed, gently open them and start to look around the room that you're in, the space that you're in. Maybe give your fingers a little wiggle, your toes a little wiggle. Move the shoulders a little bit if you like. Just bring the body gently back to movement, back to life. And take a moment for some mindful reflection on this experience, this practice, and how it was for you. Whether it was simple, easy to settle into, pleasant, whether the mind was distracted, whether the breath wasn't a stable anchor for the attention, whether the thoughts just wouldn't stop, whether they were really distracting. Again, there's no right thing to find. We are being curious about this experience and what we might learn about our relationship with thought, our relationship with the breath, the body, and how that might help us in the day-to-day, moment-to-moment challenges of life and our interactions with those around us, those we care about, those that we have to deal with that we might rather not. Thank you. So again, just take a moment to position yourself, make your body comfortable. And I'd just like to close today's stream with a little reading from a book of poems called Consolations by David White. And he writes very mindful, focused poems that I find very interesting, and I like to read to people when they're of a mind to listen. So we're going to finish with a short poem, and just let yourself listen to the words, and if you want to see how you feel about it and pay attention to the mind's response, your reactions, that's always interesting, whether you enjoy it and find it pleasant or whether you find it frustrating, vexing, something that you don't understand the relevance of, and that's perfectly fine also. Just pay attention to whatever your response, your attitude is. So this is the book, and I recommend it wholeheartedly. I'm not sponsored. I get no commission on this. There's no links to Amazon below. But if it's something you want to look into yourself, then it's well worth doing. And this is a poem called Close. Close is what we almost always are. Close to happiness, close to another, close to leaving, close to tears, close to God, close to losing faith, close to being done, close to saying something, or close to success. And even with the greatest sense of satisfaction, close to giving the whole thing up. Our human essence lies not in arrival, but in being almost there. We are creatures who are on the way. Our journey is a series of impending, anticipated arrivals. We live by unconsciously measuring the inverse distances of our proximity, an intimacy calibrated by the vulnerability we feel in giving up our sense of separation. To go beyond our normal identities and become closer than close is to lose our sense of the self in temporary joy, a form of arrival that only opens us to deeper forms of intimacy that blur our fixed, controlling surface identities. To consciously become close is a courageous form of unilateral disarmament, a chancing of our arm and our love, a willingness to hazard our affections, and an unconscious declaration that we might be equal to the inevitable loss that the vulnerability of being close will bring. Human beings do not find their essence through fulfillment or eventual arrival, but by staying close to the way they like to travel, to the way they hold the conversation between the ground on which they stand and the horizon to which they go. We are, in effect, always close to the ultimate secret, that we are more real in our simple wish to find a way than any destination we could reach. The step between not understanding that and understanding that is as close as we get to happiness. So that was Close by David White from the compilation of poems written by David called Consolations. And it has a very mindful feel, that poem. The sense of being close, perhaps being in the moment rather than being distracted by what we're thinking of doing next, our goal. And of course, when we reach our goal, we're thinking about the next one. So anyway, thank you all very much for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, share. Please come and join myself and the team, Avanti, Oliver, the Consciousness Together, on our live group show on Wednesday evening. If you've got any questions, please send them through to us at the Consciousness Together site or drop them in the comments, and we will endeavour to answer your mindful questions as best we can. So anyway, thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, however you spend it, and I will see you soon. Thanks very much.